Hey, thanks for tuning in and just, I guess, watching a little bit of a conversation that I wanted to have with my good friend Herman. What has happened this past week, I think, has ignited so much feeling within our nation about the issue of race. And so I wanted to have a conversation, I guess just an ongoing conversation you and I have had over the last really couple of years, more than anything, about some of the feelings that you have, some of the feelings that I have, just two guys that respect each other highly, we just wanted to welcome you into a conversation that we often have. Sometimes we have those at Quaker Steak and Lube. That happens to be our place.
Yep, off to 75.
But we've kind of not going to restaurants right now.
It's almost like welcome into our little room, so we can just...
So we just wanted to spend a few moments, just us sharing. I wanted you to hear, especially Herman's heart. Some of you know Herman already. He's a part of our church. And in fact, our history goes back, we were just in 1992. This guy happened to have a fantastic memory. Just 2 weeks ago, he sent me a picture from Kmart.
Kmart on
Harrison Avenue, right down, just right down a few blocks from here.
1992 or 1993, where you bought me my first ever camcorder, and that was the birth of my video editing and film production, life.
That is awesome.
That was the birth of it right there.
So I don't know. I didn't know if when you sent me that picture, if you were thanking me or you're cursing me. How much it's cost you through the years.
I was like, you're responsible for everything that I'm doing right now, the good and the bad on the video side.
Well, most of the time I get blamed for the bad for stuff, so it's not that big a deal.
That's a good milestone for me. I was like, wow, that's special. A lot of things were birthed, in that moment. So that's good. That's a good thought.
So I had a chance when I was 20-something years old. I can't remember now. It was 92.
1992.
When I had a chance to be in Zimbabwe for a couple of weeks, really. And there was a friendship, a bond, really, that I believe was started there with us. That has just kind of flourished through the years. The first time you ever got to come to the United States, you came to Cincinnati, not just because of me, but because of our good friend Mark Roser, and others that you got to know from there, and this kind of became a hub for you while in the United States. First time you stayed with my parents, then went out to Denver, stayed with my in-laws, and so through the years we've kind of
stayed in your house when you were still close by.
Yes, we've just been together, and God has kind of weaved our lives, our paths, where we will be a time where we don't see each other, don't anything, and then all of a sudden we're with each other quite a bit. Just even this past year when you and Anna have been a part of Legacy, and how God has, we're going through this pandemic right now, and the conversation we had last fall, where you're just like, have you guys ever thought about getting a few cameras? I can help you out, and we never knew how important that conversation.
When Anna and I think it was not Spaghetti Fake, it was in Coleraine Township when we were having dinner, you and I and Judith and Anna. That evening, and I said,
Outback Steakhouse is where we were.
Exactly. And I was like, how about taking our services online, and without even using any expensive equipment as such, but just using all the iOS devices, these phones that we carry in our pocket, and you're very receptive. And little did we know this is what
how important
it's been our means of communicating and connecting with people at home on Sunday mornings. And so we thank God for that moment and your response too. And now here we are again talking to people at home, and it was like, what's going on right now? How can we, and so that response was very timely.
Yeah, it really was.
And timely.
So he and I there's been a bond with us, and so we've been able to, over the last couple of years, have, I think, some decently heart-to-heart conversations. You immigrated to this country, I don't know when it was now.
First time was 2002.
Okay.
2002. Before that, I had done a lot of visits back and forth after my visit where you hosted me, and, Mark Rosa's parents did, and Pastor Godfrey at New Life Temple Church did. And then after that, you and I God just put this friendship and brotherhood together, and just like that bond So it was like out of all these relationships that were there, this was just sticking out, you know, and to where we are today, 28 years later on, you know, we're still here. You met our first child before he even turned one. Before he turned one, and then he turned one on the flight here. Huh. And then all the 3 kids that we have now, our kids, you know, when we visited, they would be like, you know, together. So just what happens in a family. Yeah. And to be where we are, I think we have talked about sensitive things. We've talked about the happy moments, the personal experiences, you know, things that we have been through and things that you've been through. And for me, what has been the most outstanding about our friendship and relationship is I've been able to be honest and to be able to be myself with you, you know, and I've, you know, naturally without even having to make an effort, I just speak my mind with you and just speak. Not trying to be someone else, not trying to be fake or to make an impression, but was you created in that environment and, you know, that atmosphere where we can just be real with each other. So I'm grateful for that.
Me too.
Yeah,
me
grateful
too.
for that.
So this past week, with all that has happened, you know, you and I pre-gamed a little bit, and we talked. We talked a few minutes about you know, maybe what we might say, but we also wanted to be kind of free flowing, just to share from our hearts, and we hope that out of this, that others maybe hear, and maybe stirs on conversation or something or some insight to life, and you know, when the video of George Floyd broke. Man, it was just...
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It is, it's gut-wrenching. It is hard to watch. I can't even watch all of it. It's difficult. I brought home the reality that is there. We cannot bury our heads in the sand and pretend there's nothing that's going on, because everybody knows. We know, you know, I know. There is something going on right now, very sensitive. And it has given rise or birth, not just birth, it has just brought again to the surface conversations and dialogue that needs to happen. Because when dialogue does not happen, what becomes the mode of expression? That's what we're seeing right now. Because when people attempt to have dialogue and we don't hear each other, and this is what happens. And right now it's sad. It is painful, but it's the reality. Nobody can pretend there's nothing going on there. People at home, no one can pretend. You and I cannot pretend that's what's going on there. For me, as a black person, that is very, very difficult. It's brought me to a place where I have questions. And because it calls out to my own personal experiences. I find myself asking myself, when am I the next one? Who is going to be the next one? Where is going to be the next one? The reality of it stares me in the face. When I open the door and I close the door and I go back, I go into my truck to drive, it is becoming almost like an accomplishment to come home back alive.
That's the way it feels.
That's the way it feels.
Wow.
Because it's not that you want to inflame any feelings, but it's just a reality that I live with. It's not something that I see on the news out there. It's something, that experience can happen anywhere, anytime, because I see it every day. I experience it every day. You and I think we were talking the day before yesterday or yesterday, I can't remember. We were just talking, like I've had in the last 2 years or last 1 year, more than 17, close to 20 times where I'm stopped again, and what's the conversation going to be like?
So there have been, over the last couple of years, you were saying, I think 15, 17 times that you can remember when you would leave a place and you would be followed home by a police officer.
I go out walking. I go out jogging. I'm followed all the way up the hill to the door by a cruiser. I'm like, I don't see it happening to anybody else out there. But this is just, And
see, to me, just to be honest, as a white dude, I would be like, all right, that could happen with anybody. But when you start saying, all right, this happens to me on a regular basis, you know.
I'm walking out of Home Depot. My apartment is right on the hill, and there's a Home Depot right at the foot of the hill, and this is less than a mile from my house. I go to Home Depot because I'm a tools person. I go out to Home Depot.
Yes, you are a tools person.
I am a tools person.
If you need a tool.
I go out to Home Depot. There's a cruiser out there. Get in my truck. I follow. A cruiser follows me all the way up the hill.
So, and that's happened more than...
How many times? 15, 17 times. I was, before I came to Legacy, I was working at Sunrise Church, and I was working at River Tree Church in Melford and in Marymount. It's 5 miles to go to Sunrise Church from my house, 5 miles. But to go through that 5, to get to the church from that 5 miles, I would be stopped sometimes twice, sometimes 3. I'd go through Madisonville, I'm stopped to go through Marymount.
What do you mean by stopped?
By the police.
Oh, you mean they just pull you over?
Pull you over.
For what reason?
Yeah. Where are you going? I work at the church. I'm going to church. Can I see some ID? Yeah, here's my ID. Okay. I'm like, you asked me, that's fine. Next day I'm stopped. Same question. Same. I work at the same place. I'm like, how many times do I?
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, how many times do I have to be asking for it? It's the same department, same place, same neighborhood. You see how many times you see me during the week. You see me on Sunday morning. I'll get to a point where I would have to drive all the way on 71, all the way up to 75, go around. That's like 15 extra miles to go, come back, so that I can just not avoid just being stopped. Worse, when I was driving through Terrace Park, almost the same spot. I'm like, this is just getting too much. If I want to make it to church on time, I have to go through the highway. Because it's like, what are you doing here? I'm driving is the shortest way to church. Oh yeah. Even if you say church, you're going to think, oh yeah, I think the word church is going to say something. It's like the same thing. And I've gotten to the point where I even have to carry my passport. Where are you from? I speak with an accent.
Yeah.
Where are you from? I'm originally born from Zimbabwe, but I'm a citizen. Here's my passport. So I have to keep it handy. I've learned now, I don't keep it in a back pocket or in some place that's very difficult to reach because it becomes risky. It's like, what am I reaching for? So now my passport or my ID is close by. Can I reach for my passport? Can I reach for my ID? My driver's license is, I can't even put it in the back pocket. And also I have to carry my work ID so I can prove that
you're employed or whatever.
I'm employed.
Like you're maybe coming from work or whatever.
Yeah. And here's another thing that's been happening now. When I come from work, I don't take my reflective vest off and my work ID. So at least when I'm stopped, they can see I'm wearing my work attire. And do I have to do that? I shouldn't have to do that. I should just be able to just get in my car and drive and go.
That's what I do.
Yeah. But it has become, because you don't know who is next. You don't know. I have 2 boys, Daniel and David. I worry about them. Is it good to worry? No, I don't want to worry, but that's the reality. I get anxious about them because they're 28 and 26. They're young men. They are tall. I always wonder, is there going to be a moment where they're stopped and someone thinks they're a threat? And then I get the next phone call, I get the next knock on the door, like, we're sorry to tell you that your son, this is what's happening. And it's very confusing right now because I look at the situation that happened this week. This is with cameras rolling.
Yeah, it's crazy.
With the video rolling. Yeah. And with
broad daylight in the middle of a busy street.
Cool, collected face, as if nothing is happening, but underneath his knee, there's a man dying.
Yeah.
And I cannot breathe.
Yeah.
I just cannot breathe.
Calling out to mom.
Yeah, calling out to mom. And his mom, I've just found out his mom died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And one of the police officers there actually even said, man, you've got him down. He cannot breathe. At least, and this is where we are. Yeah. So I'm like, for me, right, I took some time off from work during this pandemic, right, because I'm asthmatic, right? And I know how difficult it is to cry out for breath to look for the air when you don't have. That's just on a normal day. And I'm like, if I catch this coronavirus and I begin to struggle, how hard is it to be able to look for breath? Then I'm thinking, I am asthmatic and I have someone's knee on my neck, and I'm like, this is it. I'm looking at the last few minutes of my life, on my last few minutes of my time on earth, underneath somebody's knee.
Yeah.
And what message is that sending?
Yeah.
And this is in front of the world, because right now, everybody's got cameras, everybody's got phones, and whatever is filmed, it goes what, and it knows people are gonna see this, and it's like, oh yeah, it's almost like a message, like, oh yeah, if this can happen to you, this can happen to anybody, this can happen anytime.
When you say a message, you mean like a message of intimidation type of thing?
Intimidation, yeah, a message of, you be subdued. So
you're subject to me or whatever. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. As I was watching that video, I could not help but my mind was flashing really to you at first, thinking, that could be you.
Yeah.
In a flashing moment.
Yeah.
At the wrong place at the wrong time, whatever the and how would I respond to that?
All right. Sometimes it's not even the wrong place at the wrong time. You're in your own house.
Yeah.
I am in my own apartment. I have had knocks on my door 3 times from police. Your neighbor said this and called, and they said you're playing. I'm just still wearing my work uniform. I have not even put my work bag down. My ID is still around my lanyard. And the neighbor thinks I was making noise. How would I make noise? I'm not even there at my house. Yeah. And I'm like, officer, look, I'm still. Are you looking to escalate the situation? I was like, oh yeah, they said the neighbors are confident it was you. I said, I saw your cruiser parked right down there in the parking lot as I'm driving in. You saw me drive in. I saw, how do I make noise? And I'm like, so this is, like, I'm glad you called and we talked, I'm like, it can be me. It can be anybody. And so you wonder, like, do you want to live with question marks in your mind, in your heart every day, and it's like you're wondering, when is the next moment? When is my wife going to get the message? Or my kids going to get the message? Or when am I going to get the message about one of my kids? It's a tough reality to live with. It's a tough one.
We were talking earlier about some of my past history growing up as a kid, where when you're growing up, you don't know really much different. The language that we would use, the N-word was a kind of just who we were. I did tell you that I believe that my family had a lot of racist tendencies. I told you, I said we didn't on Saturday nights wear white sheets or anything like that. At least my immediate family, I don't know. I got a large family, so I don't know I don't know all. But it was just common the way that we viewed people of a different color, and when I look at it now and I realize the attitude that we had was just shameful, wrong. As a theologian, I guess you could call me. It's sinful, to see another human being in any way other than an image bearer of God. It's just flat out wrong.
It's wrong. And I don't know if I've shared this with you in my part of our history in Zimbabwe. Before Zimbabwe became independent from Britain, it was called Rhodesia. It was under the system of racial segregation, or they called it separate development. In South Africa, it was called apartheid, where whites and blacks didn't mix. But before independence, what we went through, blacks and whites are not equal, right? We could not sit on the same table like this. I was a servant, and I work for you, almost like some mild form of slavery, but and it was a bitter war, the civil war that went through, to get to independence. So you could not ride in the same truck as a white person. If you're in the truck, you're in the back of the truck, not in the cab of the truck. even if there's nothing in the actual cabin with the driver. During that war in Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia then, before it became Zimbabwe, we became victims of chemical warfare. I personally suffered from that, because the white soldiers would come and spray some chemicals in our grasslands and everything, and you would get all these blisters on our skin. If you ever go and you research on the anthrax wars, that was perfected in Zimbabwe at that time. And so what was happening is our uniforms, school uniforms that we were buying, we were required to buy them from one store. It was called NB stores. And that material was being mixed in some chemical which would react with our sweat. So when we put that material on and you sweat, your skin just fell off. And then there was a sulfur-based kind of medication that we were supposed to smear all over our skin. We thought it was going to make us well. It would make us worse. So you'll be looking at a person with the whole skin off, like pink. Your skin is just burning off. And so it shaped a lot of mentality in us that we are not equal. We are subjects. We are slaves. We are only, and this was being pushed, like, you're a master. White persons were masters to us. When we went to a job, we could work the same job, but I would never get paid the same amount of money. I would never get any higher in any rank. So it doesn't matter how hard you work. Even if you are teaching someone something that you knew, a skill that you knew, you teach and then you take a back seat because you are not equal. We were like half a species or half a brain. And so it's like, when I began to see these experiences, after independence, things kind of started getting better, and then all of a sudden, I was like, out of the circumstances, which I'll talk about later on when we moved over here, I'm like, am I beginning to see a replay of things that we thought God had delivered us out of? I'm seeing, like, when is the relief ever going to come? When is the change ever going to come? So you get to a point where you want to be able to relate without thinking about your skin color. This just like you look at your arm and when we look at my arm, just let's call them just basic shades. But deep down here, we're the same. Brothers from two different mothers. But you know what I'm trying to say? Where this doesn't become the feature on the table. It doesn't become the centerpiece in the room. But it is something that it's a beast that we have to talk about. It cannot be ignored. It's there in the room.
So what's it like for you now? You're here in the United States. Your family involved. You've gotten your citizenship. I think you're dual citizens, right? Zimbabwe is still in your heart, and you love those people, and want to go back and see your family and everything. But you have you're a citizen, all those kind of things, and yet. First off, I would imagine that you've probably experienced some things because of being a black man. Just by color alone, sometimes that can be enough. You're not a little black man. You're a nice-sized black man.
Kind of threatening.
I'm probably a little bit tougher than you. But
let's try that.
No, let's not. Both of those are big guys, and I think even sometimes our size, that can be intimidating to folks. So you've got that, and then you've got an accent.
I have an accent. I'm an immigrant. I'm black.
So tell me what that is like. A couple of those experiences of what it's been like for you because of that.
Very good question, man. Because every day I wake up, and that's the reality that I wake up in. I wake up black. I wake up immigrant. I wake up with an accent. Those things don't go away. I drive indoors. I work in those conditions. And it's not been easy, to be honest with you, every day. You have to justify and explain your existence and your presence around. Every day I'm reminded I am not welcome. I'm like, I would like it to be different, yes. Is it where I want to be? No. Have I met some wonderful people? Yeah. I've met some really wonderful people. I've met some beautiful brothers and sisters. And then the reality of it also is every day I'm working in the real world. I work as an aircraft technician. And sometimes I'm doing sound, sometimes I'm doing audio or video filming and so forth. I meet different people. And even in a position where the same situation I explained to you earlier on, I train people, I teach people to do some tasks, and you teach them, and they ascend faster than you, and they become your supervisors or they become your managers. It's gotten to the point where I am at that situation where my mind is made up on going back home just to be able to live with dignity, because it's painful, because the dignity is just like something that almost gets stripped away by your daily experience. You're driving, you get stopped. When you get to work, even where you say, oh, I'm not on the highway, I'm in the environment that you work in. And if you speak, even if you follow the normal channels and you speak with the right words and everything, it's almost like you're staring the hornet's nest. It becomes, why did you even speak? And so it becomes something that you live with every day. Then at the same time, you're like, it was wonderful and to be welcomed and to be able to, become a citizen of both countries. I was able to travel back and forth. And then you get to ask yourself, like, while I'm here and I'm going through these things and I'm seeing, do I want to see all these things every day? No, I don't want to see all these things. You also have family back home, and one by one, they're dying, and you're like, if I was there without enduring all this, I would be able to at least be there and be able to say my proper goodbyes, to family. And at this stage in life, I want to be at a different level, at a different stage in life, and it's like, when is the American dream ever going to be an actual dream?
Yeah.
Or am I going to sit there and wait for the dream and watch it become a nightmare? So that's the reality that I live with. That's the reality that I face. And you can, every person has a tolerance level that they live with. You get to a point where your tolerance level has just become saturated. The tipping point has almost come, and you look at, and I end up saying, how much more can I'm already back against the wall.
Yeah.
I don't have anywhere else to go. And you get to a point where you say, I speak, I still suffer. I don't speak, I still suffer.
Yeah.
So between a rock and a hard place, the stick is eating you from both ends. And not to drown out the good things that God has done, the beautiful relationships. But then when I think about the church, the house of God, where there's wonderful things that God has been doing. At the same time, I've seen the voice of the church becoming drowned. There's been a lot of it that's been going on, the voice of the church being swallowed, and people in the church failing to stand up and, it's more powerful when your brother speaks on your behalf than when you try and speak for yourself. That's what the Bible talks about, my brother's keeper.
Yeah.
There are times when your brother cannot speak. For example, when I look at George Floyd, when he was under the knee, he couldn't speak. He couldn't, but someone else, one of the police officers could have spoken up more and say, my friend, he cannot speak for himself. I am here. I'm gonna take his place and speak on his behalf. Just the same way Christ died for us, because we couldn't redeem ourselves. We couldn't change things for ourselves. And he says, you know what? I will take upon me the heavy load of their sin. You punish me, and I will become unrighteousness. I will become sin on their behalf. You reject me, God, me, your only begotten Son. You reject me. What you wanted to do to them, you do to me. Take it on me. And that's what he did. And there are times where I feel like I don't have a voice. I need a brother to speak. I need a sister to speak. So, for example, if you were in my country, I would be your voice, because where you cannot speak for yourself, like the way you've spoken for me, the way you've stood up for me, where even in material, even in financial needs, when I didn't have and you stood in and you came in. You know, it's not something that I'm ashamed to say, because this is what how God has used you. I've shared with you some of my most basic needs, and you've come through. And am I a hard worker? Yes, I am. But sometimes I'm not. It's not managing well, not because I'm a careless steward. It's because it's just the resources are just like spread out so thin. It's just you're trying to normalize, just to come to a normal stage of life.
I bet. Yeah.
And your life has been starting all over, again and
again. Yeah.
Always been in transit. And you get to a point where you say, I don't want to be in transit anymore. I just want to be able to settle, but without having to think about my skin. I want to be able to go to church and not feel white or black. And that's, you know, just I'm going to take a little deviation. Sometimes I felt it in the church, where you go and you sit next to someone and they stand up, they put a chair between you and them. And I'm like, this is the house of God. All I just want to be is just close. And so you say, okay, God, if it doesn't start in the house of God, where are we gonna see it?
Yeah.
So,
what would you say? You know, here I'm a white guy, and I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I can see that.
And we could get into we don't, you know, we've only got a limited amount of time. There are all kinds of. I'm thinking, oh man, I like to ask about this and this, and we can talk about this. So when the camera's gone, we can talk some more.
Oh yeah.
But what can I, as a follower of Jesus, you know, what steps do you think could be helpful in order to be your voice to not just your voice, but those of color who are marginalized in all sorts of ways? You know, in my view, my understanding, very limited, of all of this is, you know, I was born into what we sometimes call white privilege. I think a good word is white advantage, whatever, you know, we can use words that we don't always, they can become hot buttons, and that's not what I mean by that. I was born as a white guy in a country that is not ruled, but controlled by white men. So I was born at advantage, just plain and simple. Whether people like that or not, that's just the way it is. How do I, as a follower of Jesus, who says that there is no male or female, you know, Jew nor Greek, there's none of that. There's no, you know, there's not a white and a black. There's just us, people made in the image of God. What do I do to equalize that?
To equalize the first step, and the second step, and the third step are all the same. Listen, listen, listen. Hear me, and hear me.
Why? Because why is that important?
When you listen, you're able to transport yourself into my shoes and hear me to the end of the sentence. And when you think you have heard me, listen some more. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Boy, that's tough for me.
It's a tough one.
Because I got 1,000 things to say, man.
Because what happens is we usually end up interpreting someone's experiences through our own experience. And we assume, no, it cannot be like that. No, because we interpret everything from our own perspective. Right now, I have this bottle and you've got that bottle. What you're seeing on the other side of the bottle is different from, I can see you have a bottle and you try to describe something. Maybe you're describing something on this side that I cannot see, and I say, no, it's not there, because it's hidden from my side. And take a moment to just come out of your own experience and just be in mine and see how long you can last in my situation. I can never experience what it is to be a white person, because it will never happen. And you will never experience what it is like to be a black person. So you'll be able to say, what can we do? It's by listening. And when I listen to you and you listen to me, believe me, understand, and you know what I'm trying to say? And I'm not making it up.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. You know, because if you know, we have talked quite a bit, and sometimes it still just blows my mind. You know, like when we were talking about getting pulled over. You know.
And what does it feel? It's like, just believe me, it's happening. I'm not making it up. I'm not trying to be a victim. I'm not trying to draw some sympathy. I'm just explaining, you know, what it is. Sometimes, if, situations at work, even at work, I have to have someone testify on my behalf to be believed. If I speak on just my word alone is not enough. And then so I have a friend. He's just left the company that we work together. So he's white, you know, and so many times he said to come and says, "Oh, Herman, you need to keep quiet. Let me use my white privilege."
That's what he says. Yeah.
So we have this internal joke. Not that we want it to be like that between him and I. Yeah. And I would be texting him and say, "Hey, man, I think I'm running short of white privilege over here. Can you come over here?" Because it's not something that, you know, I'm just saying it lightly, but it's sad that it has to be that.
That's the reality of
when I walk through the door, by default, I'm wrong. Until someone else speaks to add to my credibility, to add to, it's like, by myself, I'm not enough. I cannot say anything believable until someone comes of a different shade. He says, "Oh yeah, if it's said by him, it must be true." Him by himself, no. So that's what you call an underdog situation. That it's a permanent situation.
Do you when you mentioned that, I was thinking, and I think there's at least a comparison to, because I've talked to some of my women friends that will tell you almost the same thing.
Yeah.
If they say it, there's one thing, but if a white guy, a white man says it, then it's like gospel.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, I just said the same thing.
Same thing. It's a written law when it's spoken. It's a written edict. You know, boom, boom. That's it. So that's you know, so that's a hard one to live with, but that's the reality that we have. Yeah. You know, so. And
so then you get, I would imagine that you sometimes will get labeled as, if you speak up, you become rabble rouser. You're a victim. You're just throwing, you know, and all this kind of stuff too.
So I've been labeled a victim, a perennial victim, because then you speak. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not just being a victim. I'm just highlighting the truth. Yeah. And it's like, so it's a label that it gets stuck on you all the time. Yeah. So you're dead when you speak. You're dead when you're quiet. So it's like, so what is my existence? So you end up getting to a place where you say, you know what, I need to change my location. So I can be able to be in a place where I don't have to have this as my skin color is my down card. I just want to be a human being. I just want to be a person. I want to wake up and not even think about my skin color, not even think about my accent, not even think about correctly structuring my sentences. I just want to be me. I just want to be natural. So it's painful. That's a reality. Is it easy to do? It's not easy to do, but I am at a place where that's the only thing that I'm facing. Yeah.
What? I don't know how long we've been talking or anything, but I still don't know. I look at the clock and still don't know. I should look at the clock at the beginning.
That's all right.
But you know, you're a pastor. I'm a pastor. Yeah. When you look at the Bible, how does the Bible address some of these things?
Yeah. In my, I think we spoke briefly about that, where Jesus made references to Jews or Gentiles or Samaritans in Judea. And let's look at, the story of Jesus when he needed some water to drink. And he went to the well and he asked it for water. And the first response that he got from the woman was like, "You, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan, for a drink." He was like, "Oh, okay, let's go back there." It existed right there in the days of Jesus, to the point where they couldn't even give each other a drink of water because of where they came from. And so when Jesus was giving us the commission, he was careful enough to specify, when you take this gospel, I want you to go to Judea, to Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the earth. In other words, treat all these different regions and locations and nationalities the same. The gospel is for everyone. In other words, don't look at a person's color and don't look at a person's height or the shade of their skin and determine, do they deserve the gospel, or should I, treat everyone. And Paul, it says, I don't seek to know any man after the flesh. I don't want to know any man after the flesh, but only Christ and him crucified.
Wow. I've never thought of that verse to skin color.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So it's there in the Bible because God knows we as human beings. You know what? Look at David when he was being anointed, and the prophet was ready to anoint. And says, "Oh, that one, he looks handsome, and he's my daughter." And God says, "No, that's not that one." And you know what comes out of that? It says, "Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart." In the heart.
Yeah.
So this is where it is. It's right here, your heart and my heart. God wants the plumbing of our heart to be connected, and not us to be limited by what we see. And even looking at the black and white skin, this is not a limitation. It's not supposed to be a limitation. It's supposed to be, it's just different shades, different colors of flowers in the same garden. Just imagine one garden with all yellow flowers. It will just be boring to look at. So we are flowers in God's garden with different shades. And that's what makes us beautiful. That's what should be making us beautiful. Not our differences should not be used to divide us. Our differences should be able to use to add variety and flavor in what God is doing. You know, so I'm glad we're having this conversation. There's a lot that we could have, but I would like to see the church rise up to become what God has called it to be. You know, earlier when I was saying sometimes when things are not right, we don't want to hear the truth in its full doses because it becomes uncomfortable. And we would like to see the Church of Jesus Christ take his voice back and be what is supposed to be the hope for the nations.
Yeah. I got to tell you and we probably should wrap up soon, but you know, I was talking about myself a little bit ago. I was thinking of my dad, you know, and you know, Dad, and you know, if you all don't know, my dad was a police officer, and he went through. He was one of the riot police. In fact, last night I was watching some of this things going on in downtown Cincinnati. Wearing the same riot gear, and they were marching just like my dad was trained to march. And you know, I couldn't help but think of me as a little kid, worried about my dad, whether he would make it back that night, you know, and all the kind of crazy stuff that was going on. But the thing that transformed his life, I know transformed your life. Is at least transforming my life. I've still got a long way to go, but was that relationship with Jesus? It radically changed my life. I told you earlier that you know, my dad being at that Full Gospel Businessmen meeting where so much. The way that he was raised, with the racist views that he had, and then what he was experiencing on his daily job, he did not know how to manage the tensions that were there, and was causing so much inner turmoil with him. That he was at this meeting, and the bunch of guys in the room, and the speaker says, "I want you to stand up and turn around and hug the first person that you see." Well, my dad does not like to hug. He especially hug another guy. It's just you just don't do that. Well, he turns around, and he said it was a very large black man, just smiling from ear to ear with his arms out. And my dad is like, I couldn't act like he wasn't there. And he comes in, he says, he puts his arms around me. He said it was right then that the Holy Spirit began to melt his heart of all of the inner anger, turmoil, the things that had been built up within inside of him. That to me is the ultimate answer for us as not just a nation, but as the human race. To be able to have this dialogue and to say, yes, we are the same because of the one who loves us.
It melts the differences and tears the walls of partitions down. And it's those moments like what your dad had, almost like what Paul had on the road to Damascus, where he was like, hey, I am the one that you persecute. I'm the one who lives in those people. And that was a turning moment in his life. And we would like to see people, both black and white, have those moments.
We need more of those moments.
We need both sides. We need those moments where we don't see just the color. It's there. We acknowledge, but we have those. We need, each one of us needs a moment where You say, I love my brother and my sister, and I'm going to go out of my own skin into his position and experience life from his angle, and just we can see that oneness, that we're supposed to be there, because that's how it's supposed to be. It's beautiful. It's more beautiful together than divided. And so right now, with all this that's going on right now, it's a painful reality that we go out and we see the rioting that's taking place right now. And many people are filled with questions right now. Is it good to riot? No, it's not. Is it good to have all the situations that we have? No, we're not. So if we don't have a dialogue, we will see a situation escalate and escalate. And
it becomes a powder keg that just been building. And you can see, we can say the pandemic, and I'm sure that has something to do with it, but over the last few years, this is my opinion, there has been an escalation of rhetoric and lobbing bombs at each other, if you will, verbally or texting or whatever, Twitter, all of that, that is building up tension within our country, that at some point something's going to give.
And this is a natural child of that. When a pregnancy, when there's a conception, the pregnancy grows. And naturally there will be a delivery. And this is what we're seeing, like you're saying. All the things that we've been lobbying at each other, and now we're seeing it bears fruit.
So we probably need to have dialogue in lots of areas, don't we? Politically, we need to have it racially, gender, all those sort of things. Lots of dialogue that we need to start listening, like you said. I did listen. I at least heard that for a moment. Whether I can do it or not, that's the hard part.
But, before I came here, I was talking to Anna, and I was saying, there's two interesting words, that people sometimes we just interchange and just use, and we think they mean the same thing. There's a lecture, and there's a lesson. A lecture is what the professor is given. It only becomes a lesson when you have learned it. So right now, there's a lot of, everybody throwing these lectures to each other. When we start listening, when we start learning with each other, and we'd be like, okay, we want to learn something. I want to learn from you, and I want you to learn from me. We need to hear each other and to listen, so that we don't have these lectures hanging on in the air. Everybody's lecturing. This person is supposed to do that, this person, but we're not willing to actually go out there and learn and come out of our comfort zones and say, you know what, I want to hear from you. Give me with that which is not comfortable. I'm going to listen. And sometimes when it becomes uncomfortable, we start speaking, so that we stop it because it's too much of a dosage. And I was like, just listen some more. It's painful. But we need to hear each other and to listen more and more.
So with that, we should probably wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a lot. I look forward to more and more conversation, and we talk. And I'm grateful for having this time for to speak to people at home, and it's an honor to just be able to talk and come into people's homes through their phones and their computers. And did we say some things that are always comfortable? No, they're not always comfortable to hear, but
thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks you all for just being here and listening, and for being a part of this dialogue, at least a one-sided dialogue. I would encourage you to let's just go talk to some folks and listen to what people are saying and be open.